Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing our 1858 match between Paul Charles Morphy and Adolf Anderssen, and we are currently in game 3. So if you've been following what's going on in the Morphy saga so far, the first match was won by Anderssen and the second match ended in a draw. There were a couple of good chances for Anderssen in that game as well, but in the end he didn't take his chance, and now we are in game 3. That's much shorter than the previous two games, but it's features a very rare moment in the match. So it's a complete lapse of judgment, maybe, or maybe it was just it seems like a blunder that should not happen in a match of this importance. But I'm very interested in hearing what you guys think about it. So let's check it out. Morphy has the white pieces again, and I thought he was gonna try to go for e4 again and try to get his way with Anderssen, using the Evans Gambit and everything, since he lost the first game employing the Evans Gambit, but he doesn't. He actually goes for the Ruy Lopez. So let's see how the game went. We have e4 by Morphy, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5, going for the Ruy Lopez like Anderssen did in the second game. Knight to f6, Anderssen goes for the Berlin defense, and now d4, striking in the center right away. And now, if you capture with the e-pawn, then white has a lot of options. He can castle and then maybe go e5, and then, black could run into some very unpleasant positions. But instead, Anderssen just captures on d4 with the knight. We have knight captures on d4 by Morphy, and now e captures on d4. We have e5 now, challenging the knight here. And here comes a move that, is really interesting. Here, Anderssen can move the knight to e4. He can move the knight to d5, but he actually plays c6. So, trying to give up his knight for the bishop on b5. And who has a great opinion about this position? It is our good friend Johann Jakob Löwenthal. As you know, he's been annotating a lot of the games that Morphy has been playing, still to prove that he is as good as Morphy. And he says c6 is just a terrible move. It's absolute garbage. In his book, he says that a weak move and the cause of all subsequent embarrassment. But suffice it to say that c6 is the strongest move recommended by the engine. So again, our good friend Lowenthal doesn't really know what he's talking about. But such is the fate of everyone who comments on chess. There is always a better engine at some point in time, and then it will seem like you had no idea what you were talking about, especially for that time when they had no engines. But okay, c6 by Anderssen, and now Morphy has to make a choice whether to just trade or to maybe go for something else, and Morphy just castles here. And now Anderssen should definitely consider something like knight to d5, and then Morphy has to move the bishop. Let's say bishop c4, knight c7, and then the game continues. We can develop our dark square bishop, castle, play d6, and so on. But here Anderssen captures on b5, and while c6 wasn't maybe that bad of an idea, capturing on b5 maybe is giving Morphy a bit too much, because Morphy will not capture on f6. Morphy plays bishop to g5. And now he says, I don't have to capture and allow you rapid development. If I capture, I'm going to mess up your pawn structure. And the problem is here, if you try something like h6 to drive away the bishop, Morphy has an instant win with rook to e1, something Lowenthal actually got right. Now there's no defending this. If you capture here, then we just capture. E captures on f6. This is a discovered check. There's no defending this. Bishop e7, we're going to capture with the rook. And now after the king moves, even pawn captures on g7 is completely winning. If king captures, we're going to play queen to d4 with check. And now after king to f8, queen to f6. And the problem is, if black captures here, this is checkmate. And if you don't capture, well, not all that much to play. You can play rook h7 to kind of defend against this checkmating idea. But it doesn't really help. We just play rook captures on f7, and then the queen just hangs. Rook captures, queen captures here, and the white is completely winning. So after bishop to g5, we have bishop to e7 by Anderssen, saying, okay, you're welcome to reclaim your piece. And now e captures on f6. And now Anderssen has to decide whether to capture with the bishop or with the pawn. Both moves have their merits, but the g captures on f6 maybe a bit more wild, since you already have doubled d pawns, you have doubled b pawn, and now you're going to have doubled f pawn. So even if this is playable, you do have the bishop pair. Positionally, black should not be okay here. But again, it's a position where our good friend Johann Jakob Löwenthal says that, yeah, this is bad because queen captures on d4 is just winning for white, but queen captures on d4 actually equalizes the position for black, so queen to b6, for example, and the black is perfectly fine. The problem is, even if you triple black's pawns here, you have to move the bishop moves, and now after a move like b4, now this endgame is not a problem for black with the queens of the board. You have the bishop pair, you're going to play d5, develop your light square bishop, and the rooks already have nicely open files, semi-open files, so it's going to be very, very much playable for black. But okay, Anderssen obviously does not agree with that, so he plays bishop captures on f6 instead of g captures, and now rook to e1 check by Morphy. So the king has to move, castling is no longer allowed, and now bishop captures on f6. We have queen captures on f6, and now Morphy plays c3. If you try something like queen e2 to deliver checkmate, g6 is sufficient for black to eliminate any and all threats. So after queen captures on f6, we have c3. Morphy's trying to give up, a little bit more here. Not give up. He's basically trying to trade this off to get a nice developing move with the knight in. But Anderssen, of course, not about to allow it. He plays d5 and he wants to develop his own pieces. So c captures on d4. Morphy wins the pawn now, and the bishop to e6 now. We have knight to c3 and a6 now, defending the b5 pawn. And now Morphy has to figure out how to play this well. There is no more dark square bishop from black, so there's only a light square bishop. The e5 square is free for grabs, so he plays rook to e5. Now there's a double attack on the d5 pawn. Queen to b3 is coming, so you can attack it 3 times. So the other rook is coming to d1, so or e1 is just going to be a very nice position for white. And the black still has to decide how to activate this rook, and more importantly, how to activate this rook. Probably g6, king, g7, and then bringing the rook into the game, but that's 3 moves, and you don't really have that. Now, you could allow this. If Anderssen really wanted to develop, he should give up the pawn. He should play something like h6 right away, and if knight captures on d5, okay, we're going to capture, bishop captures on d5, rook captures, and then we're going to play g6, play king to g7, bring the rook in, and we're going to have, a nice grip on the d4 pawn, regardless of just losing our own d5 pawn. But okay, after rook to e5, Anderssen decides to defend it with rook to d8. He says, okay, there's still time, g6, king g7, the other rook coming into the game. But now queen to b3. Morphy adds another attacker, and now queen to e7. This is a very cool trap by Anderssen, just showing how impressive of a player he is, because if Morphy was eager to grab this pawn with knight captures on d5, then comes queen to d6, now with a triple attack on the knight, and then best for Morphy is probably queen b4, just trying to trade queens. Now he plays bishop captures on d5, we're going to play rook captures on d5, and now queen captures here on b4. So winning the queen like this, and even giving up the 2 rooks. For example, rook captures with check, king e7, rook captures here, but now we're going to capture on b2, attack the rook, and after rook to d1, capture the a2 pawn. And now Morphy would have 2 rooks and the pass pawn against the queen, but the queen side majority here, not majority, the queen side, the 3 pawns on the queen side would be too much for Morphy's rooks to stop. So he doesn't go for that. After queen to e7, although knight captures on d5, very interesting, Morphy just brings the other rook into the attack as well, now doubles up on the e file, and now g5 by Anderssen, saying, I'm not here to defend, I'm here to attack. I'm going to play h4, and then, just get my pawns in front of your king. So now Morphy has to decide how to go about this. He first plays queen to d1. He wants to play queen to d2, and then put pressure on the g5 square. And now if Anderssen was eager to continue the attack, let's say he goes h5, then queen to d2, we attack the pawn, and if rook to g8 defending, now we play h4. And now after g4, we have this queen to h6 check, and white wins. That's the problem, because now if you block, if you move the king, then this is just winning. Rook captures, and rook captures wins the queen. And if you don't move the king, if you block with rook to g7, again, it's not a problem, just rook to g5, and there's no defending this. If f6, trying to get the queen to help out with the defense, now rook captures on e6 is just winning. Queen captures, rook captures on g7, and that's a game over. So instead, after queen to d1, we have queen to f6 by Anderssen, and now Morphy has to figure out a game plan, whether he wants to play something like queen d2 as planned, going after the g5 pawn, then probably Anderssen defends with h6, and then the game continues, or he wants to play knight to e2, maybe bring the knight over to g3, maybe to h5 later on in the game. Morphy does none of that. Morphy just plays the other rook e1 to e3, and now prepares rook to f3 to challenge Anderssen's queen here. And there is only one good move for Anderssen here. Two moves. Rook to d6 is also playable, but king to g7 is just the best. King to g7 for a very good reason. Because, I'm not going to tell you why, because you're going to figure out the pause the video moment too easily if I tell you why king to g7 is essential here. But just to show you what happened, rook to g8 was played instead. Okay, now you have very nice control of this g pawn, but there's a problem. Rook to g8 completely blunders the position. He probably had some plans of maybe playing king to e7, then rook here, the other rook coming to g8, maybe even doubling up, maybe some rook coming into the attack here. Who knows what he had in mind, but he completely overlooked one very important move from Morphy. So feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Morphy while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting it. It's not difficult to spot once you know it's there, much like all things in life. But for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook captures on e6. Of course, that's what we play, and now you understand why king to g7 was essential. Because now, it was in this position on move 20. Yes, we are still in move 20 that Adolf Anderssen resigned the game, and Morphy equalizes the match by winning the third game. So now Anderssen wins the first one. Second is a draw, and Morphy wins the third one. There's nothing to be done here. If you capture here, then just rook f3 wins the queen. That's why it'd be much better if the king was on g7, so no such move would be possible. And if you don't capture the rook, well, there's nothing to play. I mean, you could try something like queen to g7 and say, okay, I'll try and play anything being down a piece, but Anderssen is too great a gentleman to even attempt something like this and waste Morphy's time like this. So after rook to g8, sorry, not after rook to g8, after rook captures on e6, a tough blow for Anderssen, who played a really spectacular match so far, and this one move now equalizes the match in Morphy's favor, and we'll see what happens later on in the match. But so far, Morphy was struggling in the first game a lot, in the second game somewhat, but now in the third game it seemed that he got the upper hand. I did some reading, and supposedly he knew the chess theory from Max Lange about this entire opening up until the move 12, but this has not been confirmed. Some say that Morphy knew theory about this up until the move 12, and that Anderssen didn't. Others say that there is no evidence of this, so we'll never know. But it was played very impressively, and Black got into some trouble, but he equalized very easily and very early on. And I think my favorite part of the game was Lowenthal's comment about this c6 move, that it's a weak move and the cause of all subsequent embarrassment, when it is in fact the strongest move recommended by the engine. And in honor of Johann Jakob Lowenthal, our good friend, I'm going to use this as a part of the thumbnail. So that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you're continuing to enjoy the Morphy saga. It's not going anywhere. There are still plenty of games to be shown. I would like to thank Pedro Felix, Tiana Milieu, Benjamin Wilson, John Lockwood, and David Kimura for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga until it ends. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.